know what each desert is and then where to kind of find them according to this temperate or according to this climate guide right here, we can go ahead and take this and just bring it down in opacity so that I can just barely see it. And then now I can use this as a guide, and I can use the pen tool to kind of draw the areas in which my deserts will be. Hey, Adam, and hi, Night. Glad that you're both here. Awesome. Good to see so many faces. So let's talk about the guide. And the way that I set this up is pretty simple. I use the line tool with a dot pattern with a color, and then I kind of draw out the design. Now, one thing that you'll notice is that the size of your deserts aren't just determined by the scale that you've set, and I have set a scale. When I turn on the grid, each one of these cells is 250 square miles. Just know that the smaller the desert is, the harder it is going to be to kind of telegraph or show the detail of the biome. So if you make them a really small desert, like only one cell, 250 square miles, just know that you're going to have a very small area in which to put down stamps. So this will greatly determine a lot of your scale with your stamps. Now, what also can determine how big your deserts are is also the size of your land masses. Now, you'll notice that the land masses that I've created here, they don't take up a lot of the screen. They're relatively small. So I made sure that my deserts weren't massive. And deserts can be huge. Some deserts on Earth are hundreds of thousands of square miles, and some are only tens of thousands of square miles. None of the deserts that I have here are actually that big. The largest ones that I have are probably around a couple thousand square miles. So they're really small deserts. And again, I deliberately chose that because of the size of the land masses that I have. They're not very big. So the smaller and smaller your land masses are, you're going to have to start factoring in. If you want to fit a lot of biomes into those spaces, you're going to have to make the biomes just a little bit smaller. As you can see already that these desert biomes already take up quite a bit of space. So there's not going to be a lot of room. It's going to be very compact. So I'll kind of zoom in real quick and you can kind of see how I put together the location for each one of these deserts. You'll see there's a frigid zone here, and I've got a polar desert up here. It's up in that polar region, as you would expect. You have a coastal desert right here, and of course, remember, it's along a large sea, and a sea generally has some land that kind of cordons off some of it. So this right here would be a sea, so it's along that coastal desert. Again, it's fantasy, so you could put a coastal desert anywhere that you wanted along the coastline, but it's generally along a sea. And then you also have this interior desert that I have right here. It's really in the center of the kind of this landmass right here, so it's very clear that it's an interior desert. And then I also am going to have a rain shadow desert. Remember, I mentioned this is formed by mountain ranges that kind of keep moisture from getting in. And so right here I have a rain shadow desert right here. Perfect. Set it up in between those mountain ranges. Next, there's those mid-latitude deserts. Remember, those are generally in the tropic, but I went off a little bit into my subtropics as well. That's allowed to happen. I generally don't use complex rules and systems when I'm putting together my biomes and stuff, because it's just so much work. You as a DM will be doing so much work. And so the more complex rules, weather patterns, wind, direction, you can add all those things, but just know that you as a DM might not have all the time to go through this very detailed like rule system that you have to follow. And, oh, well, this desert wouldn't be here because this is here and this is that, and the wind wouldn't touch this. And that's okay if you want to do that, but I find that that is exhausting and it's a lot of work for me. So I only just pick some very basic rules so that way I don't have to do that excess work. And the basic rules that I put down were the land masses and the where the oceans are and where the mountains are. And of course, all of those things, water, mountains, all play a huge role in the development of biomes, right? And so just keep, when you're doing the rules about your biomes and the weather and stuff, keep it simple, because you as a DM have so much work to do. I can't tell you how much work you're giving yourself if you're going to go down this super hyper realistic route. It's just a lot of work, and I give mad props to those who are going to do that, because that is very impressive. So I'm also going to throw in a fantasy desert, and there's all kinds of fantasy deserts that you can come up with, like an obsidian desert, a desert made of ground up bones, like a marrow desert, or maybe you want to have like a glass desert or a salt desert, kind of like a salt pan. kind of situation. Fantasy, you can really do whatever you want, and you can place them anywhere you want. Notice that I'm putting this fantasy desert right here, right along a sea or along the ocean here. And so I can really kind of just do whatever I want with that. There's also those subtropical deserts. Remember, I tried to keep them within the subtropic area. It bleeds off a little bit into the temperate zone, but that's okay. And we can show some distinction or some kind of transition between the subtropical part and the temperate part. So that's kind of fun when we go doing that. We're going to get into colored stuff later, by the way, Jonathan Frost. I generally don't do any texturing until much later, but you can follow whatever method that you want. If people are kind of curious how to do texturing right away, we can include texturing here. But generally what I do is I put all my stamps down within each biome, and then I'll decide what textures to use, because what's really cool about the Parchment World style is that all the stamps generally have a clipping mask, and so you can paint whatever you want on it. And so I generally do the painting at the end for that reason. Okay, because you're going to end up doing a lot of changing and painting, because you might accidentally paint a mountain some sand color when you wanted it to be brown. And so there's this kind of issue that arises when it comes to painting. And then when it comes to the Parchment World style, I always save it for the later part. But we can cover that. Just let me know in the chat if you guys prefer to cover some texturing techniques in this stream, okay? Let's cover those last couple deserts here. I'm putting another fantasy desert right here. Again, along the coastline, fairly large. And then I have a couple over here, a monsoon desert. Monsoon deserts are similar to interior deserts in a sense that they are generally further away from large bodies of water like the ocean or a sea. So they kind of follow a similar logic. So, and then you're going to want to add biomes around the monsoon desert that kind of explain that season, like some type of swamp where there's some kind of moisture. Where is that moisture coming from? You have a little lake, a little river right here alongside that monsoon desert that could play a role in that monsoon, right? And there's also, again, a couple more that you've already seen, like another subtropical desert right here. So those are the